Hey, if you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to get spoiled, then click here. Put a link to my non-spoiler review if you're just looking to get an opinion as far as whether you should go out and see the movie. Then yeah, you'll definitely want to check that out. This right here is all spoilers. So if you've seen the movie already or you just don't care, and yeah, you just want to hear spoiler talk and yeah, get into that, then this is the video for that. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, I'm gonna start with the Eternals. Yeah, so I mentioned like which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like in my non-spoiler review. Gilgamesh first. So yeah, just like I don't think there's much more that I can add. It really did come down to the acting for me, and not to necessarily say that he's a bad actor, right? I'm sure because he has a filmography, he has a huge filmography, right? But of course, that is in foreign films, right? The fact that he's here in this movie speaking English, you could definitely notice, and I definitely noticed, and it definitely took me out of it. Unfortunately, it just the impact, right? It was the impact of the lines that he was his lines, what he was trying to deliver. It didn't land for me, right? So yeah, it sucks. Now two other Eternals that I can kind of dive into a bit deeper now, being able to mention more specific details from the film, are Druig and Sprite. We'll do Druig first. I was just confused. So I mentioned in my non-spoiler review that there was kind of a difference of contradictions, right, as far as like what he was what his ideal was, or what he was trying to do, right? So he didn't want the humans to fight, right? So he mind controlled them, right? And the Eternals, they're getting together and they go out and they find him in the middle of the Amazon, just with his own like little cult, I guess. There's no really other way to put it. It's a cult that he's mind controlled. They have that whole action sequence, the Deviants attack, the whole thing goes down. And at the very end, Cersei talks to him and, asks, why didn't you take control of everyone, right? Which is the obvious question, right? I mean, if that was truly his goal, right? If that was truly how he felt and wanted to protect humans, then why didn't he just do that? He had the power, right, to just control everyone. So why didn't he? And he mentions that by doing so, he didn't, because by doing so, he removes, their freedom of choice, what makes them inherently human, right? So it's kind of confusing that he feels that way, but he's continued to live in the middle of the Amazon with his like secluded little cult following. Maybe thinking about it now, maybe you can say that those people chose voluntarily to follow him. Like maybe there was a moment where he said like, okay, you're free to go, like I feel bad controlling you, right? Maybe he came to that realization and he gave him that option, and instead they just kind of decided to like stick with him, because I guess it was just at that point all that they knew. Yeah, I just thought about that right now actually, and I guess that's kind of viable, but still, I just thought about that now. And having not thought about that earlier, it was just confusing. It was just confusing as far as like the character and his motives and what his like true intentions were. Yeah, I couldn't make heads or tails as far as like his character and what he was about. So that was unfortunate. Unfortunate because otherwise, like the way he was portrayed, the actor's performance was great. I very much enjoyed it. So yeah, it's a shame that I was just like a little thrown off as far as like the writing, the way that he was presented. So yeah. Sprite was probably the one. Okay, so I did mention in my non-spoiler review that there were several like plot threads that were just like dropped or didn't pay off at the end of the movie, and Sprite was one of those, right? Sprite was interesting. Sprite inherently was an interesting character, right? Out of all the Eternals, the only one that was in a child's body, right? Imagine living an eternity, but as a child, right? It must be a completely different experience than like all the other Eternals, right? Who get to live as adults, and you have the kind of freedom that you have as an adult. As a child, it's so much more limiting, right? And yeah, sure, she has like her transformation powers, but of course, I think it's not going to be the same, right? There's still going to be limitations there, and that's shown in the character, right? She makes that confession to Cersei, and you have that moment when they are in the Amazon forest at Druig's place where she kind of does like unload a little bit and says like, imagine like being born into a body. Like, why was I born into this body, man? And when that moment happened, I thought like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like, we're getting some depth with her. I This can like pan out to something. This could actually like turn into something like deep. And nope, it doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay off at all. At the end of the day, they make her like they don't focus so much on that. They decide to focus more on her love of, or her, I guess, like hidden secret love of Icarus, and make her, stab Cersei in the back, which I thought, when it happened, I was legitimately shocked. I thought it was a good moment, but it actually doesn't come to have any effect, unfortunately, right? So it kind of just like, okay, like what was the point of that? What was the point of her character altogether, right? We didn't get a payoff as far as her like story, as far as like being trapped in a body that she felt that she didn't belong in, which I felt like was a very big like I thought that was like huge, that they could like something that they could really capitalize on as far as like storytelling goes, right? They didn't do that. Like at the end of the day, her betrayal didn't really mean anything, because it really didn't like it didn't seem to injure Cersei in any like critical way. She just kind of like, once Druig knocked her out, she just kind of got up and went along her way, right? It was kind of like a nothing. It really was just nothing. It didn't amount to anything, right? So that was so it was disappointing. So at the end of the day, yeah, Sprite was, for me, was disappointing for that reason, just because it could have been so much more, man. There could have been they could have ended the film in a way where like that kind of her issue, what her issue was actually kind of acknowledged and had somewhat of a more satisfying conclusion, right? Yeah, so as far as the Eternals go, I guess those were my biggest gripes, right? With Gilgamesh, Druig, and Sprite. Everyone else, I was pretty much, I liked Fastos. Even though Fastos, they didn't give him a whole lot to work with, I felt like he really capitalized with the little time that he did have, and I really got to like the way his character was portrayed. Makari even less so. Makari, I guess it's not even arguable, right? She was given the absolute least to work with as far as like backstory or character development, because she was the last Eternal that they kind of like reunited with, and she was just apparently just stuck in like their ship that they first came to Earth on, and she was just there, and she just stole stuff, like different like artifacts and historical stuff, like throughout time, and she just had it all stored up there on the ship, like a chipmunk, like hoarding nuts. It's kind of strange now that I say it out loud, that that's all that we really got from her, other than the fact that she's deaf. Now that I think about it, that's kind of, yeah, wow, they really just did use the fact that she is deaf as her like defining character. Huh. I don't know, is that good? Huh, okay. Now I'll push that to the side, because that's just like a thought that came in now. Regardless, right? Regardless of the fact that like she definitely had the least to work with, I still thought that she was great, right? With what she had, especially, she shined, especially more so than anywhere else in the action sequences, right? She was freaking a force to be reckoned with, right? That fight, her going toe to toe with Icarus, that shit was awesome, man. That was so cool. And I mentioned in my spoiler-free review how like these characters, the Eternals have like some parallels that you can make to like DC universe heroes. So of course Makari The Flash, Icarus, Superman. And to see both of them go at it like that, it was crazy. It was as if it was just like it was literally like an on-screen representation of like the Flash versus Superman. And although we did, now thinking about that, we did get a little bit of that in the Justice League movie. But I just really liked how it was done here. That I actually liked that whole like last like the fights at the end with Icarus and the other Eternals. Man, I thought it was really cool. Yeah, I really liked it. So it was, even though Makari didn't have a whole lot to work with, she was great. She was great nonetheless. She was great in the action sequences. That little like flirty like romance with Druig, she played that off great as well in the little time that it was highlighted, right? Kingo, of course, is one of my favorites from the first moment. I did think it was weird that he didn't show up in the final fight at all, right? I was really like expecting him to like kind of swoop in and kind of do like some kind of last minute like something, yeah, some like last minute heroics to kind of like sway the tide of the battle. The other Eternals, I was with Athena. I thought she was fantastic. Angelina Jolie was fantastic there. And unfortunately, Cersei, I feel like didn't do like a whole lot for me. She wasn't necessarily bad. I just feel like I didn't really like get a feel of like what the character was about, right? As opposed to Icarus. Yeah, I feel like Icarus, I really connected with Icarus, and I mentioned this in my non-spoiler review because there was a situation where they all underwent this situation, right? This scenario where they were basically told a lie, right? It's the way that Druig put it when he was presented, that their entire life was a lie, right? And that's a lot to deal with. And the thing is that I actually experienced something like that, right? At a young age, I basically, grew up to a certain point, and told that like my life was just not what I thought that it was, right? And that shit's rough, man. That shit's really rough. It really, yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to deal with. I can't lie and say that it's something easy. So I get like that kind of fall into madness. I get that kind of desperation to kind of like stick to what he knows, right? What he's always been told, right? That kind of desperation to just like cling on to that, like, because it's all he's known, it's all he's ever known. And for someone to come in, out of nowhere, like, and just say like, no, it's not gonna be like that. Some people can take that, and some other people not so much, right? So I wonder if a lot of the critics reviews fell on that. I wonder if there were like critics mentioning that maybe his motivation wasn't really like supported all that much. And to me, I definitely had more of a personal connection with what he was going through. So I definitely didn't feel that way. I definitely feel like the actions that he took and the way that he was reacting were completely normal, right? I think to someone, I think it's to, people who don't undergo a situation like that where their just the entire world is like just completely ripped from under them and flipped upside down. It's going to be a lot harder to be able to connect or to be able to like sympathize or understand, what a person in that situation would go through. But yeah, due to my, personal experiences, I was able to make that connection a lot more. And I really liked Icarus's character because of that, right? At the same time, I definitely didn't see like his betrayal coming, right? I got it, I understood it, which is, I feel is important as far as like being able to like continue on with the movie, to follow along the story. But yeah, I didn't see it coming. I thought it was gonna be Ajax. I knew one of them was like off. One of them was gonna end up being like Rogue, right? But I did not see it coming. I did not think it was gonna be him. And then like once that moment comes where you just make that realization, like I just let out an audible like fuck. Like I was I didn't see it coming. I don't know, and I may have been just like, I may have been blind a little bit. I may have had like tunnel vision, right? But I was entranced, bro. Like I was really like intrigued with the overall story, and it got me. Like, yeah, I was legitimately shocked at it at that moment. The Eternal, who I thought was gonna end up being the kind of the betrayer, right, was Ajak, right, Salma Hayek's character. I thought she was gonna be the one, right? I mean, she was the one who had like the direct connection with the big dude. What's his name? Erisham. Erisham. There we go. Erisham. Yeah, so she was the one with like the main connection with Erisham, right? She was kind of like the basically like the one kind of like just doling out all of his commands, right? So it seemed more the most likely, right, I guess, that she would be the one to kind of like be the one betraying everyone, right? She's the one who kind of had like more information than the others as well. And yeah, I just thought it was her. So the fact, another shock that I experienced in the movie was when she was found dead in the beginning, in the start, like within, I want to say within the first like 30 minutes of the movie, right? They found her dead, and I saw that, and I'm like, no way, there's no way. I wrote down in my notebook, I wrote it down when it happened. I wrote, no way. No way. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. And then on top of that, her power, right? Her ability, which is based on healing, right? It seems so strange to me that a hero with the ability to heal would be like taken out like that. And I just kept thinking like, okay, maybe she's gonna like come back somehow. Like, she's gonna come back and she's gonna be the bad guy, right, at the end. But no, I was wrong, straight up. I kind of like that. I mean, I like that. I like that, the fact that I was not able to like follow along with the story, that there were actual like beats that like threw me off the path, that kind of like, got me thinking like, okay, like what is this about? Like, how is this gonna pan out? Like, how's everything, like, how is this gonna like come to like a resolution at the end? So I was hooked. I was hooked on the story. I was hooked until probably the very last moment at the end, during the third act, in which we have the final confrontation, the true testament of love, right? Icarus is staring down on Cersei, and the question, the question is, will he do it, right? Will he be able to like suppress his feelings, and actually, go full force with completing his duty and stop her? And at the end of the day, and it just caught me off guard, because out of nowhere she floats up, right? She starts connecting with all the other ones, including Icarus, right? And then the Titan gets like frozen over, right? And then we get the explanation afterwards, like, oh, okay, like there's something inherently like in the Titan that makes it so that like the Eternals are protected. So that's the reason that they don't die like once a Celestial is born and a planet is destroyed. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's a thing, apparently, right? So that was the thing that threw me off, that it was just kind of like a MacGuffin, right? It was just kind of like this last minute, like, ex machina out of nowhere, like, hey, like, what? Yeah, it was truly, yeah, it was a shame. It was a shame because, and I'll tie this in with like the fact that there were different plot threads that were not resolved, right? So we got Sprite. I definitely think Sprite could have been involved with like the final final like conflict, or the final, what's the word? The kind of like final face-off, let's say it like that. The final like face-off between like the last Eternals there. I definitely think Sprite could have had like something to do there, like as far as like Icarus and Cersei and Sprite being thrown in there somehow. I don't know exactly like what or how, but maybe even like yeah, I don't know exactly how, but I just feel like it could have something could have been done better, right? Anyway, another plot thread was Thena, right? Thena and her whole situation. Although I did mention in my spoiler-free review that out of all the plot threads, that was probably the one that was resolved a little bit better, right? I do like the fact that it was like her having to fight against the Deviant at the end. The Deviant using Gilgamesh's power primarily, right? I did find that, very poetic, right? Her having to kind of like face like her protector, right? It was, very poetic in a sense, like her having to like face that extreme adversity, right? To overcome that and like come face to face with this villain that had already killed the person that was protecting her all this time, and her finally getting getting her revenge at the end. So in that sense, it was well done. What I didn't like was the fact that presumably, I don't know if I'm wrong for thinking this, but I was left with the impression that with that final encounter between the Deviant and Thena, that she had kind of like completely recuperated her memories, right? Because during those final moments, it kind of kept being repeated, like remember, remember, remember. And then by the end, right, when she kills him off and she's just standing there, I think she says, I remember. So it seems strange to me that like she finally got to this point where she, at least it seemed that she, got clarity. Or maybe she was referring to like, when she said I remember, maybe she was referring to like her life there. Like with that particular like life that she had with those Eternals, right? Not any life that she had lived before. Huh. I guess that's possible. I was under the impression that she kind of like got clarity with her like thoughts, her memories from her previous lives, and that somehow that was gonna come into play with like how the movie was ending and how like they were gonna deal with the Celestial. But no, that didn't happen. So either I'm dumb and I kind of read into the situation wrong, or they just didn't do anything with it. And probably the most disappointing of the dropped plot threads, I want to say, is with the Deviants, man. It was, man, that was a real shame, I feel. I found it so fucking interesting, the Deviants. It's kind of weird because it's interesting because they go through like an evolution in of themselves, right? And I feel like very rarely do we get like a villain in a movie, in an MCU movie, that does that happens to. But the Deviants, you think about it, they start off as these kind of like very primitive, right? Predators, right? I also very much like the mention of like at the very beginning of the movie, when Cersei comes in late to her class, she mentions to her class, she starts talking to them about apex predators, right? And if you notice the designs of the Deviants throughout the entirety of the film, they're all like different apex predators, right? At one point when they're in the Amazon, they take on like the shape of like jaguars. When Icarus pushes Ajax off of the cliff and they're like in Alaska, they take on the shape of wolves and bears, right? I found that super interesting. And it was even more interesting when you consider the fact that what is it that the kind of the king, the leader Deviant, he has a name, let me look it up. Crow. So Bill Skarsgård played Crow, which was the main like leader, like Deviant, the one that killed Ajax and absorbed her power, and the one that killed Gilgamesh and absorbed his power, right? The one that had the final face-off with Thena, sorry. So Crow, what did he eventually evolve into, right? The ultimate like apex predator of them all, a human, right? He got a human shape, right? He resembled, by the end of it, after absorbing Gilgamesh, he like had a very like human appearance to him. And I thought that was so fucking genius. That was genius. as far as like the whole like analogy, like apex predator analogy, and going from like wolves and sharks and lions, tigers, whatever, and like it eventually, as they grew stronger, becoming a human, right? That was so good. That was so good. So you have that kind of development, right? But then you also have like the reasoning, right? Once he takes on that more human form after killing Gilgamesh. He has this kind of like monologue explaining like, what he's all about, and kind of just painting the light that he just wants to protect his kind, right? The Eternals were brought about to kill deviants, and he doesn't want that. He wants his deviants, his own kind, his family, right, presumably, to live, right? And then it's very interesting because you then have this kind of conflict of ideals, and this conflict of ideals is actually a very like a good common theme that is kind of continues throughout the film, right? We have it here in the sense that, okay, you have the deviants and you have the Eternals, right? But who really is the good guy, right? You have like this deviant, all of a sudden he can talk now, and he's saying like, hey, you guys keep killing us, fuck you guys, right? Whereas the Eternals were always brought up to believe that the deviants were like evil and like they had to be eradicated, right? So now that the quote unquote enemy has a voice, right? Now all of a sudden you're kind of like left to wonder like, oh shit, like are they really like the good guys? Like what's going on here? So you had that conflict of interest, right? And then you have a conflict of ideals, and then you had also the conflict of ideals as far as like the Eternals, how they wanted to deal with the Celestial, right? Because you had, I want to say the majority of them, right? The majority of them were like on the side of protecting the Earth, not sacrificing the lives of everyone on Earth in order for this Celestial to be born. But there were a few that were against it, right? Most notably Kingo, right? And I guess actually even more notably Icarus, right? Because he was the one that actually fought back to make sure that went down. Kingo just kind of like removed himself from the situation altogether, which didn't really prove to be a help, right? Didn't prove to be any help for the other ones that were trying to like save the Earth, right? So I found this like very it was an interesting like conflict of ideals, because at the same time, while the ones that were on the side of saving the Earth, at the same time they didn't want to kill the Celestial, right? Like they made that very clear, like no, we're not killing him, we're just putting him to sleep, right? So you had like this conflict of ideals, right? And I feel like it's something that's very like true in our current day and time, where like you have like people that are, want to fight for good, right? For common good, right? For common decency for people. But at the same time, you don't want to stoop down to the level of your adversary, right? And it's very difficult, right? And I found it so like super interesting that like they kind of brought this up, and this kind of conflict was even existing in the movie, right? Which kind of leads to why the ending was all that more like disappointing, because they set up like, think about everything that I'm mentioning here, like all like so many like interesting like plot threads and kind of like themes and things being brought up, and at the end of the day, the final resolution is just an ex machina, right? Something coming out of nowhere just to like save them, right? So that was the most disappointing thing for me about the movie, right? I feel that the Deviants, going back to the Deviants and what they were about, I feel like they should have definitely been more utilized in that final battle. Like that final battle between Crow, is his name? Or is it Koro? Crow. Between Crow and Thena, I was at the edge of my seat because I legitimately did not know who was going to end up on top there. I did not know who was going to come out of that alive. I was definitely leaning more to the side of Angelina Jolie's character dying. And I thought more of it. I thought more of that because I thought that was more likely, because I thought to myself, there's no way Angelina Jolie is going to come back for another Marvel MCU movie. That was my thought, like, even before coming into this movie. Like, because she was never, I don't think she was even mentioned, like, as part of the main cast. She was always mentioned as, like, a featuring, right? It was always, like, you always got, like, even during the credits, I noted it. You got, like, the full cast, right? Gemma Chan, Rich Madden, everyone. And then you got, at the very end, with Angelina Jolie. You also got it with Salma Hayek, but her character actually, yeah, we're not going to see her again. So I always thought to myself that, like, she was not, like, her character was not going to make it out of this, because she is not coming back for another either an Eternals 2 or another MCU film, whatever they plan to do with the Eternals later down the line. I did not think that was going to be the case. So I definitely was more on the side of Thena dying. And then when she didn't, and the way that they did it too, because they really, like, drew that out until the very end. Even when, like, Crow had Thena, like, wrapped up, like, you thought, oh shit, that's it, like, she's dead. And then at the very last second, whoosh, she whips out her sword, whoosh, cuts him. Woo! I gotta say, I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was cool for Thena's, like, storyline, her plot thread. I thought it was cool. But unfortunately, that brought an end to the Deviant plot thread, which I thought was super disappointing, right? Because I thought that they really, like, brought up something that could have been that could have been expanded on. I am definitely of the mindset that the Deviants should have been the primary, like, threat, the primary villain, right? By the end of the movie. And they weren't. They just were kind of brought in as, like, the kind of, like, thing, right, for the heroes to fight against, right? The kind of, like, lackeys, right? The kind of, like, henchmen, right? The nameless henchmen that the heroes just beat up, that, like, no one cares about, right? But the thing is that they actually started to give us, like, some character development with Crow, right? So I was actually, like, intrigued by that, and I actually wanted to see that play out to something interesting. I definitely think he should have had a role to play in that final face-off, in that final conflict. If anything, I feel like the whole thing with the Celestial, that should have been, like, put off to the side in some way, shape, or form, right? I feel like that should have definitely been, like, the secondary, like, threat, right? That became the primary threat for them, the, like, Celestial being born and the Earth being destroyed. But I really feel like at the end of the day, it should have been Crow. It should have been the Deviants, right? It was just, I feel like he should have maybe, like, taken out a few more of the Eternals. Maybe he got even more stronger. Man, who knows? Maybe he even ends up, like, coming out of this movie, like, alive, and then he becomes, like, a main villain that, like, the rest of our heroes in the MCU and the Avengers and all that have to come together to fight against in as far as phase 4 or anything in the future of the MCU, right? I definitely think that, man, there was something there. There was something there to work with. As far as villains go, right, in these MCU movies, it's really, like, it's rare to get, like, an interesting, compelling, captivating villain. And they had that with Crow, with the Deviant, and they just let it go. It's so disappointing to me. It's so sad that they just squandered it, man. Yeah, that could have been something. I really, like, feel like maybe he should have just even, I don't know, man. Maybe if he just came out of that fight with, like, Thena wounded, and maybe he, like, skimpered away and just, like, ran off and hid somewhere so that we can, like, see him later down the line somewhere else. So disappointing, man. So disappointing in the sense, yeah, that there's so many things that, like, could have been capitalized on, but weren't ultimately. And that was my biggest gripe. Yeah, that was my biggest gripe overall. I was hooked. I was legitimately hooked on the movie until that final moment happened, right? That final face-off between Icarus and Cersei. Um, you know what it would have been even more convincing if at the very, very end we see that Icarus was actually gonna go for it. If we see that Icarus was actually gonna like go full based, not give a fuck, and like kill Cersei, right? We should have seen his like eyes lit up, I feel, right? I know at the end of the day, the story that they chose to tell was that like his love overcame, right? And made it so that he didn't want to like kill her. And then they just kind of like got a cop out with the fact that like they all were able to connect, and then because she was touching the celestial, they were all able to connect, and she had enough power to do the thing. Man, get the fuck out of here. That's bullshit. That's such bullshit. It just came out of nowhere. Like, it would have been so much more like, man, I think I would have even like been more on board with like that MacGuffin if Icarus actually went for the kill. If we actually saw Icarus like light up his eyes and like get ready to like beam her down and like end her, and then out of nowhere, you know, the whole connection thing happens, that would even that would have been more convincing, right? Because then we get Icarus's sacrifice at the end. Well, I guess not sacrifice, I guess just self-punishment is really what it is, right? He can't live with like what he's done, right? He can't live with the fact that he's betrayed his friends, his family, and he goes and flies himself into the sun. That right there, that moment would have been so much more impactful if we actually saw him willing to go all out on his belief, right? If we actually saw him willing to go to the point, right, where he was willing to kill the person that he loved more than anyone else in all eternity, right? He was willing to go that far just to cling on to any notion of a normal life for him, right? A life where he would feel like accomplished, that he, you know, did what he was meant to do, right? That he served his purpose. He was willing to clinch onto that so hard, so much so that he was willing to kill the one that he loved. Man, that final moment could have been so much more impactful, right? And instead, it kind of played off as kind of a bit random, right? So like, all of a sudden, you know, Cersei's able to like freeze over the celestial. Fine, the threat's gone, and then he's sad, he's upset, and then he just takes off and kills himself. And it's kind of like, okay. And then we get the explanation afterwards. It was weird. It was just so weird. It could have been so much. It could have been so much more. And I wonder like how many different drafts there were, how many different possibilities there were as far as like how to end the film. And I kind of like just sit and wonder if maybe that was just like the safest option that they had, right? And maybe that was just like, maybe COVID had something to do with it as well, maybe due to like some kind of restriction that they had. I don't know, man. It was just after a 2.5-hour film where I was just so enthralled, so like intrigued, so like hooked on like the story and the characters and what they were going to do with them. Granted, like not everything made sense in the movie, right? You know, there were definitely things that, like I mentioned, the issues with Druid and Gilgamesh and Sprite, and definitely like there were definitely like some big like exposition dumps as well, where it's kind of just like they're just like giving you a bunch of information, right? When fucking Cersei goes to talk to Arishem, and then he starts explaining like, look, you guys have done this before, like here's your memories, you guys are just robots, right? That's the very like watered down version of it, right? But that was a much like bigger exposition dump. So when all of that was happening, it was kind of like, what the fuck? What's going on? Holy shit. I think, what did I write there? Expo drop, Expo drop, huge. This is weird. That's what I wrote. This is really weird. So the film wasn't perfect, but I was still on board. And for it to end the way that it did, it was kind of like, damn it. Now, I will say that there was a little bit of resolution with Arishem kind of coming at the appearing at the end and pulling out the Eternals that remained on Earth, and kind of saying like, okay, you guys were willing to put your necks out for these guys, like that's fine, all right, that's cool, I'll let it slide, but you guys are gonna get your memories back. You're gonna find out. Maybe it wasn't the right choice. Maybe you guys fucked up. And oh yeah, Judgment Day is coming too, so look out for that. That ending kind of like brought made me feel a little bit better about the whole like situation, right? Because it kind of made it feel like there was like a consequence to them choosing to save Earth the way that they did, and that whatever that consequence is, we'll be seeing it play out in the future in maybe a Avengers movie, maybe an Avengers 5 Judgment Day, maybe, perhaps, who knows. But I like that, like that door was left open, right? As far as like the Eternals definitely playing a part in the MCU moving forward, and the Celestials, pretty much the Celestials being like the ones that they have to go up against, and it's pretty crazy to think, man. It's pretty nuts. I care way too much about this stuff, man. I just think to the moment, I'll link to the video. Comic Story, and he does reviews, or not reviews, kind of recaps of like comic book storylines, right? So I was watching the one for Null, King in Black, right? Like the King of the Symbiotes, right? I think it was like the most recent Marvel event, I want to say. Don't quote me. But yeah, I was watching that video, and there was a moment where Tony Stark, Iron Man, had to go up against like the Celestials. The Celestials ended up, yeah, I'm not gonna get into it because I probably couldn't even explain it. I mean, check out the video if you want to hear that out. It's very entertaining, so I recommend it. But yeah, somehow the Celestials got like wrapped up in that whole situation, and there was a moment where Tony Stark, Iron Man, had to face the Celestials like face to face. He like had to take them on, and it was so cool because he actually ended up using the Celestials as like an Iron Man suit, right? He actually ended up being able to control one of the Celestials as like a kind of suit. And that was super cool, man. And I just think of like something like that playing out like on the big screen in the MCU, and I just think, oh, that'd be so cool. That'd be so freaking cool. The Avengers going up against the Celestials like that, and then obviously like being a more a cosmic threat, the Guardians of the Galaxy can easily be thrown in there as well. And yeah, man, I just wow, I just found it so exciting as far as like what it means for the future of the MCU, right? Post-credits scene. The first one where we get the introduction of two new characters. Pip, is he a dwarf? No, what is he? Pip something. Hold up. The troll. He's a troll. Pip the troll. And with teleportation powers. Very interesting. And then behind him, of course, introduce the one and only Eros, or Star Fox. I've heard him go by as well. Played by none other than Harry Styles. So, of course, this was the I'm not sure if I put this in my non-spoiler review or not, but this was definitely the post-credit scene that I would say that more people were excited for than the second one. Although not me personally, right? Of course, a lot of people are Harry Styles fans, and I'm sure that once they saw him on the screen there, they just freaked the fuck out. I mean, when I saw him, I just let out an audible like, "What the fuck?" It's funny because I had heard rumors that he was gonna be like part of the MCU, but yeah, that just wow, that was just interesting to see that it played out. Yeah, he's there, he's there, and apparently, from what I've heard, he's gonna be around for quite a while. Apparently, he's like signed on for like 5 movies or something like that. So cool. So of course, we got him being another Eternal, right? We have the introduction of, the fact that there are, are other Eternals, that were sent to other planets. So now we're getting that's coming into play, and they mentioned that they want to go back to Earth because they lost contact, from all the other, the other ones that were left behind, right? Cersei, Sprite, and Kingdom, right? So they said that they wanted to go back. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but it's exciting. I'm excited to see how it all plays out as far as like the Eternals, having, being woven into like the Avengers and like the MCU as a whole, right? I find it very intriguing, and I want to see how that plays out. Then the second post-credit scene, which I found to be more intriguing, and I was legitimately in the theater, kind of like once it happened, I legit when it happened, I was just looking around to see if anyone else like was freaking out, because I was just like, what just happened? Is that who I think it was? Now I'll mention who I thought it was, and I've now learned who it truly is, but it's still just as exciting. I guess maybe not as exciting, but still exciting nonetheless. So I thought the voice, we see Dane Whitman, is that his name? Let me double check. Dane Whitman, Kit Harington's character, right? Which didn't get a whole lot to do in the movie. We really just saw him in the beginning when he was with Cersei. They were all lovey-dovey. And then at the very, very, very end of the movie, where he was trying to tell her something right before the moment Arishan comes and kind of boop, just grabs her out of existence, where he was presumably going to confess like the whole deal with his like family line, and the fact that there's like this magic sword that he has access to. So we see him in the post-credit scene with the ebony sword in front of him, and he's kind of like struggling, kind of like making that, like building up to that moment, like, should I grab it, like, do I go for it? And once it gets to the moment where he's just about to make contact, we hear kind of like we hear a voice, and the voice says, "Are you sure you want to do that, Mr. Whitman?" Cut to black. It's done. I was freaking out. I was like, what the fuck? No way. What do you mean? Who is that? What? Is that who I think it is? So I, just based on like how the voice sounded and the way he addressed him, right, Mr. Whitman, you got to take that into account, kind of. It can only be like a select number of characters, and I actually initially thought that it was, my very first instinct reaction was that it was Captain America. So I was freaking out. So I was like, wait, what the fuck is happening? So I thought like, oh shit, Cap is coming back. And maybe somehow this has to do with like the fact that he like had to travel through time to put back the Infinity Stones. Maybe along the way he found out about a bigger threat, right? So, and then maybe he started to do like some extra like time traveling stuff to kind of gather, like kind of group together, recruit another like team, right, to kind of like go up against this inevitable upcoming threat. So yeah, that was my initial thought, and of course I found out who it actually is afterwards. I did also think afterwards, after thinking about it a bit more, I'm like, no, there's no way it could be Cap. Maybe it was Doctor Strange, right? It makes sense as far as how he addressed him, and it also makes sense as far as like, it kind of sounded like whoever it was just kind of like teleported there or just came out of nowhere, right? Because obviously the room was empty when he was there, right? So whoever got there had to be like some kind of like magic or some kind of something like that. So Doctor Strange fit the bill perfectly, right? I thought it was him. But no, once I got home, I kind of like did some more research, saw some more reactions online, and it turns out that that is our first appearance of Blade in the MCU. That was Blade calling on um, Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, the Dark Knight. I forget what the hero name is, but yeah, I it's cool. It's definitely cool that it's him, right? Blade is definitely going to be a very interesting like upcoming movie to look out for. I have very little to no knowledge on Blade. You know what? I have no knowledge on Blade. The only thing that I know about Blade is the Wesley Snipes films, and I didn't even watch those really in full because they were rated R when I was a kid, so I couldn't watch them. So I have no clue whatsoever, like what this possible link can lead to, like what Dark Knight, Black Knight, his character, and Blade, like how they can join, like how are they linked? Have they had any kind of like interaction in the comics at all? I'm completely unaware. So yeah, maybe I'll look into that. Maybe not. But it's interesting nonetheless. Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely, the MCU is not like doesn't do what the comics do one for one, right? So even if if I were to research and see that maybe they do have some kind of connection, it's possible that it wouldn't play out that way one for one in a movie where they both show up. But yeah, overall it's exciting. We got Blade. He's coming. He's there. He's making moves. And then we got the cosmic thread, right? Everything having to do with the Celestials and the Eternals, and super exciting, right? Let me look over my notes, see if there's anything else good. Icarus is based. Icarus is based as fuck, bro. He's all about the mission, man. Like he's not about like he's willing to make that sacrifice, right? Sacrifice your millions so that billions can survive in the future, right? Jesus. Such an interesting character. I think I really like stories where there's like an evil Superman, right? I really like Injustice, like the thought of that, like Superman just like losing his cool and just saying like, fuck it, I'm running shit now. Fuck everyone. No one's like, I'm the strongest thing that there is. Like, none of y'all can touch me. Like, fuck you. I don't know. I love the idea of like an all powerful being that is like, you would think to be benevolent, or is like in normal circumstances, benevolent, but under these kind of like extreme circumstances, they're pushed so far that they're no longer that way, right? They become quote unquote evil, right? Can we say that they even are evil? Because they have their reasons, right? And their reasons are, they are base, right? They do actually have like reasoning behind it, right? So, I don't know. I find like that type of like storytelling like that. I don't know. It really hooks me, and I feel Richard Madden did a great job of like portraying that with his character. And yeah, just seeing an evil Superman like going around fighting the other heroes, fighting Flash, fighting Fastos with his like freaking Mega Man cannons. Um, who was there at the fight at the end as well? Dina, right? Super cool. I just thought it was super cool. Thanos saved us. So this is confirmation. I always felt it. I like how like a lot of the things that have come out from Marvel after Endgame have kind of brought up that question, right? Have brought up that doubt. Like, did the Avengers actually do the right thing by bringing everyone back, right? Right? Did they do the right thing, or did they just what's the word? Did they cause an imbalance to how things were supposed to play out? Because if it weren't for the snap, if it weren't for Thanos eliminating half of the Earth's population, right? This emergence, right? This whole situation with the Eternals, it would have happened 5 years prior, right? They just delayed it. I find it super interesting that they've like and this isn't the first time. We also like see this in WandaVision, right? We get that one episode with where we get to follow, oh God, what's her name? Monica Rambeau. We get that one episode with Monica Rambeau where she's back, right? She was one of the ones that was taken from the snap, and she's back all of a sudden. Finds herself in the middle of like a hospital that's just in crazy, like going into complete meltdown because like all of a sudden like there's a bunch of like people popping out of nowhere that weren't there like a couple minutes ago, and just the complete pandemonium and craziness. And I love that like this question is like being brought up time and time again and again and so often, and it makes you wonder, like, did they do the right thing, right? I mean, obviously they brought everyone back, but I mean, it caused so much of an impact. Falcon and Winter Soldier as well, it touched on it, right? The fact that like all of a sudden, you have refugees because you have people coming back to what supposedly were their homes 5 years ago, and they find that there are people there, and now you have like the situation where like, okay, like, so who's got to move, right? I find it so interesting that they keep bringing up this topic again and again, and I wonder if it's going to amount to anything at the end of the day. I wonder if it's going to amount to anything, if it's going to ever have like any kind of proper resolution as far as like, will there ever be a moment where like one of the Avengers or like one of the main propagators of like the things that happened in Endgame will kind of make that realization and kind of like think like, like maybe we fucked up, maybe we shouldn't have brought everyone back. I would think that Doctor Strange would probably be the most likely to have that moment with, seeing as I think naturally the first choice would be either Steven Rogers, Captain America, or Tony Stark, Iron Man, right? I think those would be like the go-to, but since those guys are pretty much out of the picture now, I think Doctor Strange has to be like the next best pick as far as like, dealing with that, so. It's intriguing. I find it intriguing, and I hope that it pays off somehow. I hope it actually like comes to. I hope it's not just like something that they're just like subtly like dropping, just as kind of a conflict point and as like something to think about. And I hope it's actually something that like has an effect, right, in future actions for our heroes in the MCU. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Sprite. Another thing that Sprite, like, what the fuck was that? Like, she tried like to freaking like delay the whole what do they call it? She was trying to delay the emergence like after she stabbed Cersei, and by duplicating the volcanoes. Like what? Like what? Like volcanoes don't move, idiot. Like what the fuck? How are you gonna lose the volcano? It was there. If she was walking towards it, like it's still gonna be there. Like just because you make like mirror images, like the volcano can't move. Like what the fuck? Honestly, I saw that and I thought it was like, what is she doing? That's the stupidest shit ever. And then she got smacked over the head with a rock by Druig, justifiably so. When she got smacked by the rock, I was like, good, she deserved to be hit by that rock. Fuck. I think that's all I got to say in terms of spoilers. Yeah, overall it was an intriguing, interesting MCU film. Definitely one that like definitely set apart, right, from the I would say most of the things that we've seen in the MCU thus far. At the end of the day, I feel like it just had so much more potential than what it amounted to. So that's a shame. But I'm still looking forward to seeing more of the Eternals and more like cosmic entities and altercations being integrated into the MCU like this. I find it super interesting, and yeah, I'm still looking forward to it nonetheless. So that's that. Let me know what you think about anything that I've mentioned. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the movie overall. It seems that this might be very well the most divisive MCU film that's ever been released. I think it's safe to say, because, man, one of my most favorite reviewers, Dan Merle, he reviewed the film, And I was expecting him to give, I didn't expect him to give praise to the movie, right? Because the movie is definitely with its faults. But I did not expect him to just straight up go out and say he disliked it. Like he was, oh my God, I did not expect him to like go as hard as he did on the movie as he did. Regardless, he's a great reviewer. Check him out. If you don't, I'll link to the video so you can check it out. But yeah, he in his review he said he didn't like it straight up, and then I'm scrolling through his comments, and the overwhelming majority of the comments are saying that they don't agree with him, right? That they liked the movie, right? And if we go on Rotten Tomatoes, of course, you know, infamously it's well known that Eternals is like is it the only rotten film in the MCU, or definitely the lowest rated. I'm not sure if it's the only rotten one, but definitely the lowest rated from the critics side. But if you look at the audience score, it's sitting at like a mid 80%. So there's a big contrast there, and it's crazy. It's crazy that like I see so many people saying that they liked it, that they enjoyed it, right? That they had fun with it. And the critics just, yeah, just on the complete other side of the fence. So it's crazy. It actually is bringing me like memories of The Last Jedi, right? As far as like the divisiveness, how divisive that was when that came out. So super interesting. I would definitely love to hear like more other people's point of views, right, on the film. So leave a damn comment. Anyway, that's it for me. Single player hero, do gaming, movie reviews, anything and everything, variety. Catch me on Twitch. That's where I did the non-spoiler review, actually. I'll be, yeah, you'll find me on Twitch, and I'll be reacting to like movie trailers, talking movie news, video game stuff as well. That's like my main like domain, like movies and video games. So I'm always talking about that shit or playing a game. So check me out there on Twitch, and of course, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more of my rants. And I'll see you all next time. Take it easy.